Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Blitz Radio Show here on WLRA 88.1 FM. The Start. This is Lewis University Radio. I am Kevin Ryan. Alongside me, I have John McCauley. Our show is basically about sports. We have professional sports, college sports. We'll talk Lewis athletics as well. Three ways you want to listen to. You can turn your radio to 88.1 FM if you're in the 13-mile area of Romeoville. You can go to WLRAradio.com. We stream live there. If you have a smartphone, you can download our WLRA app. It's free. You can listen to us on your smartphone. If you want to give us a call, it's 815-836-5000. Currently, we're working on a Facebook page. Hopefully, next week we'll have that up and ready for you guys so we can interact. And also, something else you can do, you can go to iTunes Radio, search WLRA, and it's free. You can listen to us on our iTunes Radio page. And just pretty much to preview the show that we have coming up today, Bears are made headlines all week. They have officially named their new GM, Phil Emery. He had his introductory interview today. He had some pretty interesting things to say about the team and what they're going to do from here on out. Bulls Heat game yesterday. Did Rose let the team down? I really don't believe so. We need somebody else to step up as a supporting cast. Super Bowl is highlighting the week. We have all kinds of stuff going on today. Media days tomorrow and big games on Sunday, the official holiday in America. And the Chicago All-Stars, they made their appearance in the NHL and Pro Bowlers yesterday. So we'll get that going for you guys. And John, how you doing today?
Just good. I mean, I didn't really get too much of a chance to check into Emery's speech yesterday, but I got to read a few articles about him. And the big question that comes out for me is if this guy is going to be more of like a trading kind of guy with like money and more of like a scheme, or of like a draft pick kind of guy. Because what the Bears have been like the past 10 years, their first 3 draft picks have been no good up to any date. And that's one thing I want to see what this guy can do, because the NFL is based off how good you can be inside the draft and how you can build players. And yeah, there's some other portions on like how the off seasons, free agent acquisitions, sending players to other teams for other players. But the main thing I want to know is what this guy can bring when you talk about draft picks. And looking at his background throughout the years with Kansas City, he's done a pretty decent job. But I mean, after the speech yesterday, I wasn't really too thrilled from what I'm reading, and a lot of people aren't really too high on his expectations going into this NFL draft that happens in April.
Well, I listened to his introductory speech on the radio. I was driving home from it, and it was pretty basic, nothing too fancy in it. He pretty much laid it down. He wants to win championships. He's going to build the team through the draft, and that's how he's going to do it, because that's what we haven't been successful in the past with Jerry Angelo. And it was just kind of a routine kind of a speech. And then I went home and sat down, and I watched it on Bears.com, and I thought the beginning was kind of boring, blah, 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 family. He wants to thank who he loves. Okay, that's great. But then I kind of listened to the rest of it from like the 7-minute portion to, it was a 14-minute speech from there. And I thought it was kind of good. And I thought it was interesting how he answered questions. He was very detailed. He listens to the reporters' questions, what they have to say. I thought from that point on, it was kind of interesting what he has to say. And he has an interesting background history. He was... I got it right here for us.
Well, wasn't he inside Angelo? He was connected with Angelo through something way back, like a couple of years ago.
Well, he has a history with the Bears. He was an area scout for the Bears
That's
from 98 to 2004. And let's see what we got here. He started his career at Wayne State in Michigan. That was his alma mater. And he then had several other jobs before becoming the strength and conditioning coach at the Naval Academy. Which you don't really hear that too often.
No, you
strength
don't.
And conditioning to GM.
Yeah, well, especially a guy from the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I really don't know anybody who's really famous that came out of that program when you talk about the Naval Academy. But, you know, he also brought up a good point about his expectations with Lovie, and I find that very important because Lovie is very, very strict with his players, and we don't really see it because we only see him on the sidelines every day. But behind the scenes, from what you hear about Lovie Smith, is how he interacts with his players and how close he gets with them. And it's very important that when you talk about draft picks and guys that you're going to bring into this organization, that they're going to get along. And Lovie makes sure that and Emery wants to make sure that is too as they go into this draft in April, talking about how to form relationships with other players, which I found very, very interesting.
And one thing that the reporters were kind of going after Emery about was, does he have the power to fire a head coach right now? Because the thing was, Lovie Smith was involved in the interview process of getting Emery. So if you're looking at Lovie Smith as you're coming in, you're figuring he's higher up in the rankings than Emery, and that's not how it should have been. It goes McCaskey's, Phillips as president, GM, Emery, and then the head coach, Lovie Smith. I don't understand why Lovie was involved in that process.
Well, the thing is, I don't know anybody who wants Lovie fired. And
no, he had a good year last year, I think.
And I found it odd that he kind of brought in the conversation with kind of like, a press conference. People are obviously going to bring that up. Mm-hmm. But I just want to see how, my big thing is, I'm going to keep on repeating it, that I really want to know how this draft is going to go. Because we were talking about this, and the biggest key that the Bears need going into this season is a big impact player that can back up Jay Cutler, and he needs a go-to wide receiver. Yeah, there's a couple free agents out there that can be signed when you're talking about Vincent Jackson, Brandon Marshall. Those are pretty much the top two, but then you got a lot of good rookies in Alphonse Jeffrey, Michael Floyd from Notre Dame, Justin Blackman, and I want a big impact player. I don't really care if it's a rookie or if it's a guy that's coming from the league to come in and help out Jay, because last year we had like Roy Williams, a guy whose attitude is awful off the field. Then you got Devin Hester, who's a decent wide receiver, but he's more of an impact kind of returner. Johnny Knox is a speedy guy, and he was a great pick that they got late in the draft, but we don't want to see that anymore. We want to see guys that are taken at the beginning of the draft and that can continue to get better, not just get these guys at the end of the draft that just become lucky and just so happen to become good. So that's one thing. I want to see him show us what kind of an impact he can bring to this team to help out Jay Cutler.
That's what Angelo was good at, finding the diamond in the rough. Got that player that nobody's looking at, and then he comes in the NFL and becomes a star. That between like the 4th and 7th round, that was Angelo's glory right there. But between the rounds that really matter, that you invest your most in the 1st through 3rd, he missed year in and year out, and that's why he eventually got fired back in January, beginning of this year.
And then, his probably biggest draft pick of last year, expectation-wise, was probably Gabe Carimi, and he came in and, got injured within, like, the first few games. But, it started to bring out the conversation with, we want to build this team from the ground up, and then, they had to bring in more offensive linemen, and it's like, do we continue to keep playing these offensive linemen, or do we fill in for Gabe Carimi? So, and that's just who Jerry Angelo was, though, and that's why there had to be a change inside Halas Hall, and we're happy that there was a change. We'll have to see what goes on from here.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in him. It's kind of hard to judge a GM just on his first interview, but being the 05 college scouting director for the Atlanta Falcons, and in 2009 he became the chief scouting director, I have confidence that he knows what he's talking about. He's been doing all this scouting and recruiting for years now. So I think he's got a pretty good shot, and hopefully the Bears will cooperate with him and he can get on the same plan with Lovie Smith and they can build throughout out. Because if you look, I've looked at it also as well, when the Bears change offensive coordinators, you figure the next year is going to be a rebuilding process.
Which, yeah.
But that hasn't been the case the past few years. I think 06 we had, we had Turner. I believe that was his first year here in Chicago, back with the Bears. And it was last year, it was Martz's first year on the Bears, and that they went to the NFC Championship.
And a few people weren't too happy about the tight end scheme.
Yeah, so I'm a little optimistic about what can happen next year.
Well, as Mike Tice ever had a background of being an offensive coordinator, though, I've only seen him as a head coach and an offensive line coach.
I'm not really sure what he did with the Vikings.
He was their head coach.
I know he was a head coach, but a head coach has offensive defense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so I'm curious to see what he can bring to the table. They still got some great players. And another thing is too, we have to realize that the Bears defense is very, very old. And when you talk about Julius Peppers, Lance Briggs, Brian Urlacher, these guys aren't going to stay around forever. So who are going to be these youngsters that are going to back them up? You don't want Nick Roach being your middle linebacker after Brian Urlacher to take control. So that's one thing we kind of have to think about. But with the Bears, with football season about coming to an end, we have a lot of time to talk about this.